afternoon, welcome back to NEET World. Today this is the video of part 2, locomotion. Yesterday we discussed the locomotion of types of muscles and the structure of muscle. Today we will continue the mechanism of muscle contraction and also we will discuss the human skeleton system. Online, am I audible? Can you please confirm, am I audible? Yes, I hope it is audible, right? Done. Let's continue the class. So, yesterday we discussed the structure of, so we discussed how the actin, this protein is become, how this protein was formed and how the myosin was there. We discussed entire thing of the structure and structure of this actin and myosin. Today we are going to discuss how the muscle contraction will happen. What is the mechanism behind that muscle contraction? We have to look at that. So first of all, whenever the muscle contraction happens, what happened? There will be an initiation of signal. So there is a neuron, right? So there is a neuron. Okay, let's continue. There is a problem with mic. So what we know, there is a neuron and this is the presynaptic neuron and there is a synaptic cleft and we have one postsynaptic thing. So if it is muscle, then what we call, this is called neuromuscular junction. If this place, instead of the muscle, if you have neuron, what is that? Neuronal junction, right? So the thing is what? So there is a muscle here and we have a neuron. From neuron, what happens? Nerve impulse is coming, right? So from neuron, whenever the nerve impulse coming, all the synaptic vesicles which are containing neurotransmitter, they are going to release in where? In this synaptic cleft. In this neuromuscular junction, what happens? All these neurotransmitters are going to release, right? So whenever all the neurotransmitters are going to release in this neuromuscular junction, we have receptors on muscle. So these are what receptors? Acetylcholine receptors, right? So we have a best example of neurotransmitter. What is the best example of neurotransmitter? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is one of the neurotransmitter. So we have receptors on muscle. What receptors? Acetylcholine receptors. So whenever these neurotransmitters are released in this cleft or in this gap, all these receptors are engaged with these neurotransmitters. Then what happens? There will be an opening of channels. What channels? Sodium channels will be open. Next, what happens? All the sodium ions will be moved to inside to this muscle. So this is called what? Depolarization or activation of muscle will be happen. So the first thing is impulse has to come and impulse has to reach to this muscle. Then what happens? Opening of sodium channels will done because of what? This neurotransmitter. Whenever the neurotransmitters attach to this receptors, then there is a opening of the sodium channels, then there is a engage of all the sodium into this cytoplasm of this muscle. Then what happens in at the end of this reaction, what happens? This calcium which is present in the cytoplasm of this muscle will be increased. The level of the calcium will be increased in this muscle. Whenever the calcium is increased, then what happens? We already discussed there is one protein which is called as troponin. It has three subunits: troponin I, troponin T, troponin C. This troponin C is responsible for what? For the attachment of what? Calcium. Whenever there is an increased level of calcium in muscle, what happens? This calcium will go and attach to this troponin C protein. Next what happens? We already know this is all what? Actin molecules. This is all what? Actin molecules. These actin molecules has what? Active binding sites. And these all active binding sites are covered by what? Tropomyosin. Now what happens? Whenever the calcium is released and that calcium will bind to troponin C, next what happens? This tropomyosin is move forward or move aside. Then what happens? All these active sites are visible. Then what happens? Here we have something which is called as myosin. This myosin has two regions, two binding sites. One is for what? ATP. Another is for actin binding site. So here it is the myosin binding site. Here it is actin binding site. Here it is ATP binding site. Now because of the release of calcium, what happens? These sites are got exposed. Whenever the sites are exposed, then what happens? All these myosin will bind to these actin molecules. Let's see how they are going to bind. So this is actin, this is myosin head. This is actin, this is myosin head. We know this is one, this is for actin binding site and this is for ATP binding site. Initially what happens? ATP will come and bind. Now this ATP was hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate. Now there is a release of some energy. Because of that energy or utilizing that energy, what happens? Here what are there? Active sites. All the active sites are exposed. There is no tropomyosin. It is tropomyosin as it was situated apart. Now what happens? With the energy, there is release of some energy, right? With that energy, this site is going to attach with this site like this. So this step is called as what? Cross formation or cross bridge formation. The first step is what? Cross bridge formation. How the cross bridge was formed? Because of the release of energy by ATP hydrolysis. What happens? Utilizing that energy, this myosin head is bind with actin molecule, right? So that is called what? Cross bridge formation. Next what happens? So here we have ADP plus phosphate. Now what happens? This phosphate will be removed. This phosphate will be removed. Whenever the phosphate is removed, what happens? There is a, here we have neck, right? So there is a bend of this head molecule. That bend of this head molecule is called as what? Power stroke. Understand? The first step is what? Cross bridge formation. Right? The second step is called as power stroke. So in power stroke, what happens? There is a bend of these myosin heads. So whenever the bend of the myosin heads, what happens? There is a contraction will be happen. How the contraction will happen? Let's see. So if there is a bend towards this side, how the image will look like? So these are actin molecules. So this is head now, and this is myosin molecule. Initially this was this side, this actin was that side. So what happens? Whenever the myosin head was bent, all these actin molecules were pulled to inside. So which means, we know, right, we already studied the structure of skeletal muscle. There is two Z lines. There is two Z lines. We already know these are what? Actins. In between we have what? Myosins. So whenever this myosin head was pulled out, which means power stroke happens, all these actin molecules were pulled to inwards. Like for example, here myosin heads like this. What happens? Power stroke was happen, power stroke was happen, power stroke was happen, power stroke was happen. All these actin molecules pull inwards. What happens? Z line become shortened. Likewise, two Z lines will come close together whenever the contraction will happen. Right? So here also power stroke will happen, power stroke will happen. So two Z lines will come close together. So that's called contraction, shortening of this muscle contraction, right? So in contraction, what happens? We already discussed yesterday, Z lines will decrease, and also I band will be decreased, and also A band remains the same, and only one thing, O zone will be increased. So that was the contraction mechanism happens. So whenever the power stroke happens, all these actin molecules will pull towards inside to Z lines. So that is called what? Power stroke. Now what happens? So all this ADP, PI was released, ADP was released, there is no ATP here, it was in power stroke mode. Now what happens? A new ATP molecule will come. Now what happens? A new ATP molecule will come. Whenever there is a new ATP molecule, what happens? Here the cross bridge was broken, right? So whenever the first ATP molecules will present, that ATP will hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate. With this energy, what happens? Cross bridge was formed, and whenever this phosphate was removed, what happens? Power stroke was appeared. So after this, ADP will go, phosphate also gone, and here we have free binding sites. Now this free binding site again activated with another ATP molecule. Then what happens? This cross bridge formation will be broken out, right? This cross bridge formation will be broken down, and again this ATP was hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate for next round of contraction. So this is one contraction. Again ATP will hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate, that is for next contraction. So this was happening in muscle contraction. So starting with what? Starting with a nerve impulse. After what happens? This nerve impulse release this acetylcholine neurotransmitters. Then what happens? Receptors will be engaged with acetylcholine neurotransmitters. Then what happens? Calcium will be increased in the muscle. So whenever the calcium will be increased, there is a binding of troponin C. So it will unmask the tropomyosin from the active sites of the actin molecules. So here we have active site. So initially it was like this tropomyosin. What happens? It will be moved forward this side. So then there is a exposure of active sites. So whenever there is a exposure of active sites, simultaneously what happens, here we have myosin. Here we have myosin. On myosin head what happens, there is a ATP binding site. So this was equipped with ATP and it was hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate. So here there is a release of some energy, right? Here we have energy, here we have exposure of active sites. What happens with this energy, it will bind with actin. Now what happens, actin plus myosin. So this is called as what, cross bridge formation. Now what happens, then there is a release of inorganic phosphate. Because of the releasing of inorganic phosphate and having some amount of energy by the ATP hydrolysis, what happens, power stroke will be happen. What is power stroke? Bent of this myosin head is called as what, power stroke. So in power stroke what happens, shortening of this sarcomere. So contraction, initially contraction will be happen in power stroke. So during power stroke what happens here, if you see, these are what, these are myosin, this is also myosin, right? So this is actin, this is actin, this is actin, this is also actin, actin, actin. So these myosins are what, these are thick filaments. These are what, thick filaments, because it is made up of two meromyosin chains. So this is also what, thick filaments, right? And these are what, thin filaments. What happens here, whenever there is a power stroke happens, like this, there is a sliding of thin filaments over thick filaments. This statement you have to remember. There is a sliding, moving. So what happens, all these are coming close together, right? So this is called as what, sliding. So on what filaments are sliding, that should remember. So thin filaments are sliding over what, thick filaments. Here what are thin filaments? Actin. Here what are thick filaments? Myosin. Sometimes in exam they will give actin filaments are sliding over myosin filaments. This is also true. Thin filaments sliding over thick filaments. This is also true. Sometimes they will give opposite. Thick filaments are sliding over thin filaments. No, this is not wrong. Only we know, right, in contraction what happens? Two Z lines are coming close together. Two Z lines are nothing but what? Actin molecules. Actin molecules are only moving in contraction. Actin molecules are only sliding in the contraction. So that's why always thin filaments slide over thick filaments. So this mechanism was explained in a way that, so they gave such name called as sliding filament theory, right? So this mechanism were called as what? Sliding filament theory. Understand the mechanism of muscle contraction. So here we are, power stroke, shortening will happen. In shortening what happens? Sliding of thin filaments over thick filaments. Whenever contraction happens, it was done. No. Next what happens? Then there is a addition of new ATP, right? Now what happens? There is a addition of new ATP. Whenever there is a addition of new ATP, initially we have formed what? Cross bridge. That cross bridge was removed. That cross bridge was broken down. So from now what happens? Broken of this cross bridge. Up to here one contraction will happen. Now again what happens? This ADP was hydrolyzed into again ADP plus phosphate. It is for next round of contraction. Understand one round of contraction from starting to last, starting with nerve impulse and ending with a addition of new ATP. This was the sequence was happening in the muscle contraction. You should remember. They will ask, they will give few sentences, arrange the following events in muscle contraction in a descending order or ascending order. You should remember what is the process was going. So starting with the nerve impulse receptor calcium level increase. So whenever calcium is responsible for muscle contraction, whenever calcium level increase, then there will be an unmasking. Because of this unmasking, what happens? Exposure. Simultaneously what happens? ATP already bind with the head of the myosin. It was hydrolyzed. With that energy and with that exposure, what happens? Cross bridge was formed. After cross bridge formation, whenever they release of phosphate, inorganic phosphate, power stroke kind of thing will be happen. So power stroke is nothing but what? Shortening of this sarcomere. In shortening, what happens? Sliding filament theory, right? Thin filaments slide over thick filaments. And next what? After cross bridge formation, what happens? Then there is a addition of new ATP molecule. Whenever there is a addition of new ATP molecule, what happens? Cross bridge, initial cross bridge was broken down, right? Initial cross bridge was broken down. So up to here, one contraction will happen. Now this ATP also released, this ATP also hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate for the next round of muscle contraction, right? So this was happening in muscle contraction one round. Understand, right? Now we'll solve two questions. So this was the exact picture diagram. See, ATP is there. ATP was hydrolyzed into ADP plus phosphate, and with the release of energy, what happens? Then there is a binding of this actin and myosin will be there. Here it ADP plus phosphate. With the release of energy, this actin and myosin will be bind together. And what happens? This inorganic phosphate will be released. Then what happens? Power stroke will be happen. Right? Power stroke will be happen. So here it is not there. So power stroke, after power stroke, again new ATP will come, myosin will be detached. So that was the second round of replication, right? So here we have one question from this muscle contraction. If you see, there are few statements and they are asking choose the correct statement regarding what? Muscle contraction. So read these statements and select which statements are correct, right? If you read, a motor neuron carries a signal sent by the central nervous system to the sarcolemma, which is also called as plasma membrane of this muscle fiber. So they are telling the first step of muscle contraction. The neuron signal generates an action potential, which is also called as depolarization, which causes the release of calcium ions into sarcoplasm. It is called as cytoplasm of this muscle fiber. Next, increase in calcium inactivates the actin for breaking cross bridges. Alright. So whenever there is an increase in calcium, these actin molecules will be activated, which means unmasking will be done. So that is not inactivation, that will be activation. So this C statement will be wrong. So increase in calcium levels, what happens? Activation of these actin molecules, which means unmasking. Right. So next, actin binds to myosin head to form a cross bridge. Actin will bind to myosin head, right? We already discussed, to form what? Cross bridge. Next, shortening of sarcomere takes place by pulling of actin filaments toward the center of this A band, right? Only toward the center of this A band. A band is nothing but here what? Myosin. All the myosin area is only what? A band. So this statement is also right, but they gave little bit different. They are telling different names only. So here what? Only except C is wrong and remaining all are right. A, B, D, E, right? Here the answer is what? A, B, D, E. So from the muscle contraction, they are asking what statements are correct. And there is another question. This is from types of muscles. This is NEET 2024 question, recent question. They are asking, they gave A, B, C diagrams and they are asking what are these diagrams. Yesterday we discussed A, B, C and we will see. So they are telling B, right? C, this is definitely B because this is fusiformed shape. right? So that may be definitely smooth. So B definitely smooth means we can eliminate these two options. So smooth, right? Here also, here this is skeletal, this is also wrong. So you can easily eliminate this option based on the structure of this muscle. We can easily identify this is option B. And they are asking, not only asking the structure, they are asking the function of the muscle also. If you see, the smooth muscles are present where? All visceral organs, such as this intestine, stomach, intestine, all those things. And if you see this diagram, this is also cylindrical and round, but it is what? Branch. Branched kind of thing will be present in where? Heart only. Right here it is cardiac, heart, and this is what? Skeletal muscle. So this was a simple question from the diagram part they asked, right? So the next question is also muscle contraction. So here also they gave few statements. This is also NEET 2024 question. So it was repeated question, but in a different way they ask. Same question, same concept, same sentences also, but few words are different only. If you see the first sentence A, it is initiated by a signal sent by the central nervous system via sensory neuron. It is not sensory neuron, friends, it is motor neuron. From the central nervous system, all the information will come via motor neuron only. From muscles or from tissues, all the information will go to the central nervous system via sensory neuron. That was the exact difference, right? So it was the wrong statement. Next, neurotransmitters generates action potential in the sarcolemma, right? Neurotransmitter acetylcholine, it generates action potential, nothing but depolarization, sarcolemma plasma membrane of the muscle, right? Next, increasing calcium level leads to the binding of calcium with troponin actin filaments. So whenever there is an increase, what happens? Troponin C will be activated. This troponin C, what happens? Unmasking of this thing will be happen, right? So masking of active sites for actin is activated. Here it is the wrong statement. What happens? Whenever there is a calcium level increase, which means the activation of muscle contraction, whenever there is this kind of thing will be present, increased level of calcium, what happens? There will be unmasking kind of thing will be happen. So all the sides are got exposed, that is called what? Unmasking. Masking is nothing but what? All the sides are closed, that is called masking. When all sides are closed, there is a low level of calcium. If there is a low level of calcium, this troponin C will be activated, then there is a masking kind of thing will be happen. When there is a high level of calcium, what happens? Troponin C will be activated, and troponin C will remove this tropomyosin from this active site. So here this D statement is wrong statement. This is not masking, it is unmasking. Understand? From the little concept of muscle contraction only they will ask the statements. And utilizing the energy from ATP hydrolysis, it forms what? Cross bridge. So with the help of this ATP hydrolysis only cross bridge will be formed. Next, so here these are the statements. Here what are the statements that are wrong? A and D. And they are asking, choose the most appropriate answers from the option given below. Correct statements they are asking. So B, C, E, option A will be the right answer. You have to see whether they are asking correct statements or incorrect statements. From these statements we know B, C, E are correct and A and D are wrong. If they ask incorrect statements, sometimes in overlook what we feel, so definitely they will ask correct statements. So the answer will be B, C, E. In that option also B, C, E will be there. So definitely it will be wrong. So you have to see whether they asked incorrect or correct statements, right? So these are the few questions from muscle contraction, right? Understand this muscle contraction, types of muscles and the structure of all these things. If you don't watch this thing, you will lose definitely maybe one question, right? Definitely 1-2 questions will come from this locomotion chapter, right? So if you didn't watch, please go to the previous class in YouTube channel and watch this video. right? So now we will see human skeleton system. This entire human skeleton system is all the concepts of remembering rather than understanding. Here there is no concept. Here you have to remember the things, what we have, how many bones we have, and what are the different types of bones, and how the bones was classified into different categories. So initially these bones, this human skeleton system was classified into axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton is composed of 80 bones, whereas appendicular skeleton is composed of 126 bones. If you combine 80 plus 126, how many? 206. We have 206 bones, right? That is also one bit we cannot expect, right? So this axial skeleton, if you see this skeleton, all the axial skeleton which was highlighted with blue color, all this part is of axial skeleton, and remaining part, whatever these limbs and these hands and legs, all these things are appendicular skeleton, right? So axial skeleton is contains what? Skull, vertebrae, all backside vertebrae, and this thoracic rib cage, right? So all these things are what? Axial skeleton. We have to see what are the bones, how many bones are there, and this appendicular skeleton was present in this thing, legs and hands and legs, right? So we'll see all these things. The first of all, axial skeleton of bones. So head, this is the structure of head, and this head is composed of different number of bones. So this axial skeleton, in head we have 29 bones, and this axial skeleton was divided into cranial bones and facial bones. Cranial bones and facial bones. In NCERT they didn't ask these names of these cranial bones, names of these facial bones, but they will ask how many number of these cranial bones, such as skull bones are there, hyoid bone is there, here ossicles are there. They will ask this question only, how many number of bones are there. So you need to remember how many number of bones. See, cranial bones are 8, facial bones 14, and hyoid bone 1, here ossicles 3 in each. So we have 2 ears, so that's why 6 bones. So that thing only you need to remember. You don't need to remember frontal, parietal, and this all these things. But if you understand, if you want to know what is frontal, parietal, so this anterior portion is called as frontal, and besides we have 2 parietal, 2 sides, 2 parietal bones and temporal bones, and there is only 1 occipital bone. So based on this diagram you can easily identify what bones we have. So along this cranial bones, along with these facial bones, this side all facial bones and these are all cranial bones, we have another bone which is called as hyoid bone, right? So if you see this thing, this is called as hyoid bone, which is present beneath this jaw, supporting jaw and tongue, all these things. It is what? U-shaped bone. Sometimes they will ask, there is a bone which is called as hyoid bone which is in V-shaped. No, this is in U-shaped. Because why they will mention only V-shape? Because in animal kingdom you will study there is a something bone called as V-shaped furcula, marry through bone kind of thing you will be discussed. So that's how they will confuse this U-shaped hyoid bone with this V-shape. Just remember, U-shaped bone, this is called as hyoid bone. And right, and this skull is articulated with this spinal cord. So we are the humans, we are dichondric in nature, right? So whereas these aves are what? Monochondric in nature, which means they are containing only one occipital condyle. But we have 2. Because of the presence of 2, we can rotate our heads only 180 degrees. Whereas this aves or birds, they are having what? Only one monochondric occipital condyle. Because of that feature, they can rotate their heads over 360 degrees. Understand? The first initial is made up of what? Occipital condyle, and that thing we have what? 2 occipital condyles, which is called as dichondric, right? It is exclusively characteristic feature of these mammals or these humans. right? So that was the thing. So the next one is vertebrae. In 2026 NEET paper, they asked the question, how many number of vertebrae are present in this human? Simple question they have asked, how many number of vertebrae? They gave four options. One is what? 206. This is bones, right? And also they gave another option, I didn't remember, but they gave one option called 7, 12 and 26. So people will think vertebrae is nothing, generally they go with thoracic vertebrae. They are asking what? Total count of vertebrae. So all if you count, we have what? 26 vertebrae. So here you need to remember, that's why I am telling, you need to remember only the number of bones, number of vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae 7, starting vertebrae are what? 7. And next we have thoracic vertebrae 12, lumbar vertebrae 5, sacrum and coccus, these are the fused vertebrates having 1 and 1 only. So just remember the names. Coming to this human skeleton system, you need to remember the number of vertebrae, number of bones that are present in this human skeleton, right? So this was the question which was asked in 2026 NEET, right? The next one, and we have one sternum. So this was present in the rib cages, right? Here all the rib cages will be there. It was present in the center of this rib cage. So this is called what? Sternum. A flat bone on ventral midline of thorax. Sometimes we will feel this is only one statement. It's a very simple statement that they will give in opposite way. A flat bone on the dorsal side. If they give dorsal side, you will be confused. Is it ventral or dorsal? So this is this back side is dorsal, this front side is ventral. Just remember, this is ventral. So all these we have chordates, right? So all chordates have dorsal and ventral. Because of this thing also we have differentiated non-chordates and chordates that we'll discuss there. So remember the sentence. Remember the sentence. A flat bone on the ventral midline of thorax. Ventral midline of thorax. This part is called as ventral, right? So that was about this sternum bone, right? Understand 206 and ribs. Good. Next one, we are coming into the ribs, right? So if you identify these ribs, so we have three types of ribs. One is true ribs and vertebrochondrial ribs, and third one is floating ribs. If you understand this diagram, what happens? Starting with 1 to 7, all these ribs are connected to what? This sternum with some cartilage. That what is that cartilage? Hyaline cartilage. From 1 to 7 are called as what? True ribs. Why they are called as true ribs? Because all these true ribs arising from the back side, from here and from here to here, they are connected to the sternum via hyaline cartilage. True hyaline cartilage is present. So that's why these 1 to 7 are called as what? True ribs. Coming to this 8, 9, 10, what happens? All these vertebrae, all these are united to this seventh vertebrae. Now it is not connected directly to the sternum. It is connected via seventh vertebrae. So that's why these are called as what? False ribs. And also these are not connected with this hyaline cartilage. It is what? Normal cartilage. It is not with hyaline. It is what? Cartilage. Here they mentioned with seventh rib with the help of this hyaline cartilage, but in initial books it is called as vertebrochondrial, right? This vertebrae, chondrial means nothing but the cartilage. So hyaline cartilage, with the help of some hyaline cartilage, so it was attached directly to the sternum via seventh rib. So that's why these are called as what? False rib. In true ribs, they are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventral connected to the sternum via hyaline cartilage. So that's why true cartilage, hyaline cartilage. Whereas coming to these floating ribs, they are not attached with this sternum and they are placed where? Hanging. They are floating on this rib cage. So that's why this 11 and 12 are called as what? Floating ribs. They will give floating ribs and they will ask what is the ribs that are in this floating ribs, they will give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Likewise, they will give 11 and 12. So you need to choose 11 and 12 are the floating ribs. 8, 9, 10 are the false ribs, and remaining 1 to 7 are what? True ribs. That thing only you need to remember, right? So that was about this ribs. After that, coming to this axial skeleton, we have what? Hands and legs. So what are the bones that are present in these hands? In this read NEET 2026 or NEET 2026, they ask the order of this thing, not the hand. They have given this order of this leg. What is the order? How the arrangement of this thing? That only we have to remember. So starting with humerus, after this radula, ulna, carpals. So this thing, this area is called as carpals, and this called as was metacarpals, phalanges. So you have to remember the order. We don't remember these numbers also here, so we have to remember this order. If you want to remember this number, you can easily remember. So humerus, it is only having one radius and one ulna. And coming to carpals, wrist bone containing 8, and also we have 5 metacarpals, 5 digits, right? 5 metacarpals, and these 5 digits having 14 phalanges. Likewise, you have to remember. And in this leg also, you need to remember the order of the bones. Right? Starting with femur, patella, tibia, fibula, and tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges. So you need to remember the order of this hind limb and forelimb, right? After that, we have two bones which is called as pelvic bones and pectoral girdles. So if you see, this is what? Pectoral girdles. So this is present where? It is in shoulder region. It is in shoulder region. If you understand this flat triangular shape, this bone is called as scapula, and this is called as what? Clavicle. So here we have a one region. This is called as what? Acromionium. And this in this region, it is, if you see this, it is having some cavity. So this cavity is called as what? Gainoid cavity. If you remember here, this thing having some ball and socket joint. In next chapter we have some joints, there we will discuss, right? So just remember clavicle and scapula. And also we have pelvic girdles. In pelvic girdle, you see each coxal bone is formed by the fusion of ilium, isthmus and pubis. They will ask, this pelvic girdle is made up of what bones? Thus they will ask only ilium, isthmus and pubis. Right? Ear ossicles are made up of what? 3 bones, malleus, incus, stapes. That's how this pelvic girdle is made up of ilium, isthmus and pubis. So there are 2 coxal bones. Each coxal bone is made up of 3 bones, ilium, isthmus and pubis region. So that's how you need to remember all these bones, right? So the next one is joints. We have 3 number of joints. One is fibrous, and another one is cartilaginous, another one is synovial joints. See, there are 3 types of joints. One is fibrous joints, another one is cartilaginous joints, another one is synovial joints. Sir, on what basis we classified all these joints? So the base is what? Movement. Based on movement, we classified the bones. If you see the fibrous joints, these are what? Immovable. They cannot move. The examples are what? See, skull bones. These skull bones are never moved. So these immovable joints are what? Fibrous joints. Whereas there are some joints which can move slightly. Only 50% of their capacity they will be moved. So those bones are called as what? Cartilaginous bones. They are exclusively present in where? Vertebrae, right? So there is another type of joint which is exclusively movable joints. The best example is knee joints, right? So we have one bone here, another bone here. Here we have one kind of fluid, and this fluid is called as what? Synovial fluid. So because of this fluid and this articulating surfaces, these 2 bones are able to move. So freely move. So because of that, So this joint is called as what? Synovial joint, because of the presence of synovial fluid. So this joint is called as synovial joints. Move freely, movable joints. So from this we have one disorder called as rheumatoid arthritis and arthritis we will discuss now. So everything is interconnected. So there are three types of joints, that is, one is fibrous, another one is cartilaginous, another one is synovial joints. Anyway, you will remember about synovial joints. It is very simple. This is because of the presence of synovial fluid in between two bones, articulating bones, it is called as synovial joint. And cartilaginous joint, cartilaginous vertebrae, all these vertebrae, in between two vertebrae this cartilage will be present. So that's why we are able to bend. So we are bending only the 50%. So that is why slightly movable joints is cartilaginous. And all the skull bones never move. So that's why these are called as what? Fibrous joints. Right? Three types of joints. So, right, skull bones, all these are fibrous joints, immovable joints, and slightly movable joints where they are present. Bones are joined together with the help of cartilage. All vertebrae, all adjacent vertebrae are having what? Slightly movable joints. And there is a presence of fluid filled cavity which is called as synovial cavity. It is filled with the fluid which is called as synovial fluid. So between two bones, between two articulate bones. So that's why these joints are called as what? Synovial joints, right? So that was about joints. Now we have to see the disorders. So before that we have the types of synovial joints. So based on the location, here based on the location of synovial joint, we have few different types of joints. One is what? Ball and socket joint. We already discussed this pectoral grill. There we have gynoid cavity. So because of the presence of gynoid cavity, there is a ball like structure which was present in our shoulder. There we can rotate our hand. So this is called as what? Ball and socket joint, which is present on what? Shoulder joint and hip joint. Next one is hinge joint, which is present at knee and elbow, this way and this here. So hinge joint. And next one is pivot joint between atlas and axis. And also, and next one is gliding joint, which is present in carpals. Here we have gliding joint, right? So all these gliding joint. And after that carpals we have what? Metacarpals and all these phalanges. And here we have scadal joints between carpals and metacarpals of thumb. Right? So starting with here we have ball and socket joint, here we have hinge joint, here we have gliding joint, here we have sliding joint. And there is one joint which is called as what? Pivot joint. It is present where? Atlas and axis. That's how you need to remember. These joints are present where? These joints are movable joints. Whenever we are moving all these things, you need to remember. So these are all synovial joints. Based on the location, we have different types of synovial joints. That thing. So after this we have what? Disorders. So we have few number of disorders. They will give the name of the disorder. They will ask the function or the symptom of disorder, why it is causing. Coming to the first one is myasthenia gravis. It is an autoimmune disorder. Sir, how it will come? I will explain. In muscle contraction, I already told. So there is a neuron. From this neuron, what happens? All these neurotransmitter has to release, right? In muscle contraction, all the neurotransmitter has to release. Now what happens? We have muscle. All these neurotransmitters are attached to these receptors. If, for example, suppose if these neurotransmitters are failed to if these receptors are failed to this neurotransmitter, what happens? There will be no generation of this action potential. There will be no initiation of muscle contraction. There will be no initiation of calcium, all these things. No muscle contraction will happen. That disorder is called as what? Myasthenia gravis. It is a neuromuscular junction. It affects neuromuscular junction, which means the neuron and muscle in this junction, what happens? These neurotransmitters are unable to detect these receptors. So these receptors are unable to detect these neurotransmitters. That's how we have one disorder which is called as what? Myasthenia gravis. It leads to fatigue condition, weakening and paralysis of skeletal muscle. There will be no generation of action potential. All the muscles will be relaxed condition. So that stage is called paralysis. And next one is tetany. So what happens when there is a increased level of calcium, or when there is a low level of calcium? So for example, there will be no calcium. For example, there is no calcium. What happens? Then there is no generation of this action potential. There will be no generation of action potential. When there is no action potential generation, muscle contraction will never occur, right? So that condition is called as what? Tetany. It is the rapid spasms in muscles due to low concentration of calcium. It is the rapid spasm in muscles due to the low calcium levels, right? So the next disorder is muscular dystrophy. There is one gene which is called as dystrophin gene, which is very important for muscle. Dystrophin, it is the one of the largest gene, largest protein, which is very important for muscle. If that gene was lost, if that gene was unable to do its function, what happens? Then there will be a disorder called muscular dystrophin. What happens in a normal condition? If you see the muscle is in good condition, there is no protein which is called as dystrophin, then what happens? All the muscles will become flat. See, progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle. Why progressive degeneration will happening? Because there is no protein. We have to eat protein, then there will be a good biceps. So no protein is nothing but no dystrophin gene, no biceps. So progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle will be happen. Next one is arthritis. Inflammation area in joints. We know, right? Here we have what fluid? Synovial fluid. Because of the synovial fluid only, these two bones are moving. These two bones are what? Moving. So whenever there is a moving, it is good. For example, all this synovial fluid was over, or some other inflammation happened in this area, then what happens? This condition is called as arthritis. And there is another condition which is called as rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is different. Arthritis is nothing but inflammation of joints, whereas rheumatoid arthritis is nothing but the autoimmune disorder. Autoimmune disorder is nothing but our immune cells detect our cells and destroy our cells. That is called as autoimmune disorder. Rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune disorder. Arthritis is generally disorder, inflammation of joints. So these next one is, there is one more this disorder. What is that? Osteoporosis. I already told in this tissues what happens. There are two bones. Let's take examples of two bones, and this is what? All blood. We have calcium. There are some cells which brings all the calcium into the bones. Then what happens? This bone will become very strong. It is very hard, all these things. And there are some cells which are doing what? All the calcium which is present inside the bone, they are taking the calcium from the bone to the blood. So they are removing the calcium. So what happens? Whenever they are removing the calcium, they are forming what? Some pores. This is called as what? Osteoporosis. You see, deterioration of vertebral support or age-related disorder characterized by the decreased bone mass. What is meant by decreased bone mass? All the calcium which was present inside the bone was very low. Why? Because there are some cells, or there is some condition which is happening in our body. All the calcium was going out from this bone, leading with one holes. And this disorder is called as what? Osteoporosis. Osteo means bone, porosis nothing but holes, having holes. Bones are having holes. That is called as what? Osteoporosis. Right? So it was very common in age-related disorders. Right? Next one, final one is what? Gout. So inflammation or accumulation of this uric acid in this thumb region or this leg region is called as what? Gout disease. That is only they will ask. What chemical or what compound that is increased in this gout disease? Uric acid. That thing you need to remember. So these are the different disorders that are present in this locomotion and this chapter, right? So we have few questions, very simple. They are asking just match the diseases. They gave some diseases and we need to match it, right? Tetany is nothing but, so contraction will be not happen because there will be low level of calcium. So wild contraction muscle due to low level of calcium. From this point they will make another question also, tetany. They will give some options: wild contraction muscle due to low level, wild contraction due to high level, normal contraction due to low level, normal contraction due to high level. We can expect that question also. You need to remember, due to low level of calcium there will be wild contractions. So that is tetany. A is 3. Next one, myasthenia gravis, autoimmune disorder which affects neuromuscular junction, right? Muscular dystrophin gene, there will be a loss of dystrophin gene that causes what? Progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle. So we need to remember the examples of all the disorders and what are all the disorders. That thing only very important, right? So these are the questions that will ask for NEET examination, right? So we completed this locomotion chapter. Definitely we will get around 2 to 3 questions, right? Please come and sit. Right, I hope it was clear, right? There is no doubt. We have few questions also.